All right, then. I think that we are live. Great. Welcome everyone to the AVN Tech Talk. I'm Emmanuel. I'm a dev role here at Aventus Network. I have with me today some really cool guys. I've got Julian from VNFT, and I've got Nahu, the software architect from Aventus Network. So today we'll be going over what we've been doing the past month here at Aventus Network, walking you through a few things. And so let me share my screen so you can see this. Where is this? Wait, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So welcome to our June Tech update. So what we did throughout this month, the major focus on it was deploying batch NFTs on the Aventus mainnet. Now, so for the structure of this, I'll walk you through our AIP because this was also an Aventus improvement proposal, came out as that. I'll walk you through the AIP for that. Then I'll walk you through the code, and then we'll show you a batch NFTs live in action to take you through a demo on the VNFT demo side. So just to go over the basics, you already know that Aventus is enterprise grade but interoperable with Ethereum, looking forward to being a parachain on Polkadot, was sustainable and efficient. I mean, you have all these numbers on us, you know us already if you follow us so far. So just briefing over that. Now, just give you a little bit of a highlight summary for what we did this month. The tier 2 support for batch NFT is now completed. We have NFT backend now compatible with batch NFTs. You got tier 1 NFT contract has been redesigned and re-implemented. A little bit info there because I will be going deep into that later on. It's 2 smart contracts now deployed on tier 1, which is of course Ethereum. You have 1 factory contract, you have another listing contract. These 2 contracts are tied together and they would help with the single and batch NFTs. And now we have batch NFT support has now been deployed on the mainnet. So diving straight into the really interesting part of this, which is the code war. So Aventus improvement proposals. Now, a few things here that I'll be showing you, I'll put a link to them in the actual caption of this once the live stream is done. Walking you through our Aventus improvement proposal, which is public. You come to core, and you can see a batch NFT standard. We have 2 core proposals that are currently active on the network. We have the NFT standard and we have batch NFT standard. So just to give you a little bit of a reminder of batch NFT, of the NFT standard here, it's just the standard that goes through our NFT implementation on the Aventus network. Now, this one specifically would be for single NFTs, but there's some things here that would help you understand a little bit more about batch NFTs once we deep dive into that. So a couple of those things would be the basic structure of an NFT, right? So you see, we kind of kept this very, very plain. So it's not restricted to a specific marketplace, right? It's just a structure of an NFT. An NFT has an ID, it has a unique external reference, it has a nonce, it has an owner, and you can determine if the NFT is locked or not, all right? We're going here. So to give you a little bit explain on what those are. So an NFT should have an ID. We need to have a way to identify this NFT, a unique identifier for this NFT. We need to have a unique external reference. So does this NFT point to an off-chain asset somewhere? Then you have a nonce for this NFT. Then you have the owner account. So who owns the NFT on the Aventus blockchain? And then is the NFT locked? So is it open? Can we transfer it? Can we sell it? Or is it just locked on the Aventus network, which means you can't do anything with it, right? So then you come down to something else here where we have NFT info. So we have the ID, then we deep dive into the info. Where we come to the info of the ID, so that would obviously link to the previous struct that we saw. Then we see the batch ID is this NFT part of a batch. We see that there. Then we have royalties on the Aventus networks. Of course, we have royalties, and once we get into the code on the actual open source palette, then I'll show you exactly where the royalties are and how that is configured there. But royalties essentially is a way to say, every time this NFT is sold, I want a certain amount of a certain percentage of that to come back to a pre-specified address that we're going to set, right? Then we have total supply of this NFT. So one NFT, is a single NFT, is it more than one NFT in this batch? The multiple instances of this NFT, you have your total supply there, and you have your tier 1 authority, which is this really, really interesting, really interesting variable that we have here in our NFT info, which basically points to a smart contract on Ethereum that would take on management responsibilities for this NFT. So for example, that would be a marketplace that exists on Ethereum, for example. Now, then we have some other things here just about the NFT, and then some storage facts about the NFT. So diving into batch NFT standard here. So there are quite a few things. It's a much bigger proposal release than the previous one, like you can see here, and walk you through those. But then for the batch NFT here, the first thing here we come to is this function that basically describes how we are going to create this NFT. It's going to have an ID, the batch ID, the royalties, the total supply, tier 1 authority, and the creator. It's very similar structure to what we saw there with a single NFT. Now, so you actually come over here to creating this NFT, and you see here you have your FN sign create batch. Now it's sign create batch because most of these functions actually are signed functions. So they require a signature or proof that comes in, and this proof has to be checked. For example, that the person with the sender is actually the signer. So when you talk about a proof is an object, and this object has 3 things in it. You have a signer, you have the relayer, and you have the signature that's in this object, right? So there are a few things that we can check here with the proof. So you have this proof that comes in, you can check that, and going through the logic that it comes in through here, you have your basically ensure blocks, ensure that the sender is the signer. There's an error message if that's not it. You ensure that the tier 1 authority is not set to 0. These are the processes that you go through when you're trying to create this batch. You ensure that the total supply is not 0. Right. So then you have some other logic there that you're doing when you're creating your batch NFT, generating your batch ID and other things like that, and getting the unique ID, setting your total supply, your royalties when you're creating the batch. And you have some validation that happens when you're trying to mint the batch. Now, one thing to point out here is that when you're creating a batch NFT, so let's go with an example of I'm creating an NFT with 50 instances. Oh, I should explain a little bit what a batch NFT is. So say, for example, that you were doing an event and you wanted to create a batch NFT for your event. And let's say you had 50 VIP tickets, right? So you could create a batch NFT for those 50 VIP tickets and say that you have 50 instances of this NFT. We convert those tickets into NFTs. So you'd have 50 instances of this NFTs, and this could be one NFT of 50 instances. So they look the same, probably have the same permission rights, things like that. So you'd create those. And so because you've set it up to 50, then that would be your total supply. You cannot mint more than 50 of those NFTs in that particular batch. So you come here when you want to validate the minting of the NFT, you can come here, and then there are a few more validations that happen here, that the batch ID is not 0, because you want to make sure the batch ID is not 0. You want to check that the batch actually does exist. And then you want to check the batch is not been listed for sale already. So once all these validations are done, then we can proceed to minting the NFT. Now, when you create a batch, you've told the AVN that I want this batch created, and the batch ID is noted down and total supply is noted down, but then it doesn't actually mint all 50 instances of the batch at that point of the point of creation. So we then continue to the minting actually happens later on when you wanted to sell the NFT. So there is a link between selling the NFT, listing the NFT for sale, and then minting your NFT. So that's as far as creating the NFT goes. And you have, again, signed mint NFT badge, and it goes through the same proof check where you check your signatures and you check your proof and you arrange all of that. You have actually a very interesting function here called verify signature that takes in the raw proof and the raw signature there and matches it to what's expected to make sure that that's actually okay, and then continues with the verification there. So you obviously have some more validation here. And now for this NFT sale type, this is for fiat, but so we have a couple payment channels at the moment. You can either go through a fiat payment channel or an Ethereum payment channel. So what that means is either you're listing your NFT to be sold in fiat, or you're listing your NFT to be sold in ETH or Ethereum. These other things that we can explore more in the code. I'm just walking you through the AIP so you can see all of this there. Now, so you have this here, this encode list batch, and this actually walks you through what an example of what the signature verification process is like. You receive the signature there, and then this actually arranges it in an order that can be understood, and then sends that out. So you have this .encode here, which would basically convert into bytes, kind of like a hash, right? So you have this hard-coded string, this points to a hard-coded string, which ensures that this signature can only be used for this particular type of transaction, right? So you can reuse this signature for something else, or different type of transaction like that. So I'm actually excited to get into the code, but just to finish off on this, you have your FN signed list batch NFT for sale. So it's the process of how you list your NFT for sale. Again, it checks that the sender is the signer, it checks the proof there. There's some validation that happens, that the batch ID is not 0. There's some that you're not trying to sell more. For example, here, you're not trying to sell more than is actually in your total supply for that NFT, and that it's only the actual creator that can actually list this NFT for sale, right? So then, of course, after you've listed your NFT, you obviously want to end it. And these are two processes that can only be started or ended by the actual creator. So that's the listing or the ending the actual sale of the batch NFT. So altogether, they're just basically 4 new endpoints. It's create, it's mint, it's list, and it's end batch NFT sale. Okay, given that we've explored this, now if you actually want to see this AIP on GitHub, you can just click on that and it'll take you directly there, and you can see the actual AIP on GitHub here. But going back to this, so we have a few links on the left corner here, and one of them is code. And you can click on that. That will take you to our open source repo, where you can see a lot more of our code. At the moment, we have open source 2 palettes. Like some of you will be aware, we are on the journey to open sourcing the entire AVN. This is a gradual process of opening up palettes as we go along. At the moment, we've open sourced 2 palettes, which is the NFT manager palette and token manager palette. And given that we're talking about batch NFTs today, so we're in the NFT manager palette. You come here and you can see batch NFT.rs, which obviously would be where some of the batch NFT code is. And you have your test there for batch NFTs. So I'm just going to return here, and then we're just going to bring that here and just get that down into here. And then we can start working on that. Okay. So Nahu, I actually have the the actual guy behind the batch NFTs on the call today. And so Nahu, so far, are you okay to just give us a little bit high level overview of what is happening in this batch NFT.rs file here? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, I can't hear you. I'm not quite sure what's happening there. Oh no, can't hear you. Not sure why. Okay, no problem. That's fine. Not quite sure what's happening there. Okay, no. I'll wait for that to be sorted out. No problem. So walking through from the top here. So previously I spoke about a hard-coded text string that goes in the signature there where you're trying to sign that ensures that the signature is not used for other purposes. So you have this here. For example, you have your sign mains batch NFT context, and this would be the hard-coded string that goes there just before the signature. So you have all of this here. So one for create, one for mains, one for list, one for end, and you have this hard-coded strings there. So walking through here to some interesting bits. So now we have some function here. This function create batch, right? Now, okay. When you're trying to create a batch here, you have these things that we spoke about when I showed you the NFT manager palette initially. You have your info ID, the batch ID.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Hey, Nahu. Welcome on the call.
Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Okay, are you happy to just explain a little bit, just a little bit high level what's happening here?
Yeah, sure. So this batch.rs file, batch NFT.rs file is a module that we've written that encapsulates all the batch NFT logic in one place. So we have helper methods, we have all the constants, we have all the encoding helper utility functions all in one place. So basically, when we added batch NFT functionality, we kind of, we thought it makes sense to group them in this this module. So, everything batch NFT related you would find here. Now, what Emmanuel is showing us is all the constants that we need. These are contexts. So we call them like signature contexts. Basically, it's a string that identifies the purpose of a signature, because we have signatures. A few of the methods require verification and validation, and we use signatures for those. Each signature is like uniquely qualified, basically. So there's this context that represents where that signature is used. So the next one is the generate batch NFT batch ID function. This is where we the logic of creating a new ID for the new batch we need to generate. We have a similar method, but this time when we mint an NFT from a particular batch, then we create an ID for it as well, and that function lives here. We have the logic of creating an NFT info for a particular batch. So this is the kind of the like description of that particular batch, things like like royalties and how many we have, the total supply that Emmanuel you were talking about, who the creator is, just stuff like that. We have an actual function that creates a batch, which uses this NFT info object that I described, and we have a bunch of the encoder functions. Basically, when you sign something, one of the challenges of using cryptography, especially like things like signatures, is the format of the data that you're signing. And so we have these functions to clearly define how the data is structured before it gets signed by a private key. So these encode underscore functions would tell us exactly how that data, the inner data we're signing, is set up. So Emmanuel, if you scroll down a bit, there should be a few of those functions listed in here, each one for the type of dispatchable method that we have. So one for listing, one for ending, one for minting, and then another one for creating the batch. Then we have a couple of functions to centralize the logic between the fiat flow and the Ethereum flow, because like Emmanuel, like you said, we support two types of payment channels. And the act of responding to those requests, so when someone mints via fiat or someone mints on Ethereum, there are centralized common logic. And so we've kind of centralized them in here. The fiat flow has its own validation for some specific things. The Ethereum flow has the same, but the majority of the logic is centralized in here as well. So that's pretty much like on a high level what this file does.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that, Nawe. So now if you go through the Ethereum channel, right? Let's say, well, the journey is starting on the Ethereum channel. An NFT has been listed for sale. It's gone through to Ethereum. You've gone through the smart contract, saying, I want to list this. There's some Ethereum validation that's happened there. We now receive an event from Ethereum saying, okay, mint batch NFTs. If I remember correctly, this event is like AVN mint 2. So you have this event, you mint this, and it comes to this process mint batch event here, right? And then where is this? There is the, where is this? All right, it's not taking me there to it. Okay, cool. So let's go to lib.rs actually, if I remember where this is. It's interesting when you have to scroll through so many lines of code. Look for something. Okay, so you have this on event processed here, right? And this on event process is the way that we link this NFT manager palette to the Ethereum events palette that happens, right? So it's an event process. It's looking for a few things, doing some validation, returning some data back into the palette there. So now we're looking at this flow that's coming from Ethereum. Ethereum contract has done, it said, okay, let's mint this NFT. It's come all the way over here to on event process. You have your process mint batch NFT here. And now where is it? You can see from here, actually, it's actually focused. NFT sale type is now Ethereum, as opposed to what I showed you previously in the AIP, which was fiat, because those are two different flows there. Now, you have this validate mints batch NFT request here, right? There is the, where are we? So again, there's some validation codes, validation checks there that ensures that this batch ID is not zero and contains the batch ID and it's not open for sale and things like that. So once you have all these validation checks done, you have that's there, right? Then you have the function to mint a batch NFT. Again, I think I did show this on the AIP already, didn't I? Can't remember this one.
Yeah, I think you touched on it briefly. Okay,
cool. So you have those. Oh, and just to also show it to you, so what I did speak about in the single NFT, that is actually an NFT data.rs, and you can find it. This is, like you saw, downloaded from the open source pilot, so you can have access to this code and you can go through it. That's fine. Speaking about royalties, now that I'm seeing this, you have your royalty rate denominator. So we have this structure that defines what a royalty is, and it has two things in it. You have your recipient T1 address, the H160, which is basically your Ethereum address for the recipients of your royalty, and you have your royalty rate. And because the blockchain doesn't really, it's quite difficult in representing digital decimal numbers, sorry, you have your royalties represented as parts per million. So if you wanted to do 10% of a million, that would be 100,000, right? If you want to do 1%, then that would be something smaller, 10K or so. So you have your way of defining your royalties there, and you could then have your, where is it? So you have this implement royalty rate, which is basically giving behavior and functionality to this royalty rate. And all it does is check if the royalty that's been submitted is valid. Cool. Now, are we clear so far?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So now in terms, going back to the batch NFT.rs, okay, given that I've done a walkthrough most of this, I would then, okay, go into some of the tests here. So we have a test script here, which is quite long, and you can actually go through it and see some of the things that have been implemented. Then we have this here that just specifies that this is a test file for cargo there. So now you have this here, which is kind of describes the context, right? It helps you to contextualize what's happening there. You have that. Once you define that, then you have this where you set all your default values for this particular context happening there. Then let me close that. So once you define all your default values that are happening there, then you have this here, and this sets up all your core and your proof. So this here helps us set up a test, like a runtime for this test that we're going to run. So I don't want to call it a fake runtime, it's more like a test runtime for the test that we're going to run, right? And then you have some other functions here. So this mod is kind of like you're describing your chai or your mocha, so just to help you understand what we have there with the mod. And so we have two types of test groupings here. So you have the ones that we expect to succeed and the ones that we expect to fail, depending on how the tests have been written. And you can basically go through all of those and see, we expect this would fail because the total supply is 0. You expect the T1 authority is empty. Basically how you would basically do your individual testing there. Now then you have the same thing for mint, batch NFT, and as you keep on going down through the script, you have the same thing for listing when an NFT is for sale and other things like that so having an NFT for sale, you can basically go through all of that. Okay, so now going to the lib.rs. Now, is there anything else you want to talk about batch NFT and lib.rs? Because I know some interesting things there for batch NFT.
Well, nothing specific, but just to say that lib.rs is the main entry point. This is where we can find all the publicly accessible methods, the dispatchable methods, and then everything else that you've touched on, Emmanuel, sort of is linked to that. So if users are sending transactions from the outside, they come into this lib.rs, into the respective methods, and then they call the different modules and things to process that transaction. For Ethereum, it's slightly different, as you touched on, because we can, because of our integration, we can go to Ethereum, verify some things, and based on the outcome of that verification, we can either, mint or list it or end it directly, so users don't have to send a mint or an end transaction direct to the chain. All they have to do is interact with Ethereum, and then we can sort of do the rest.
Awesome. And about that verified signature that I was talking about previously, this is basically it. It's how we verify the signature that comes in the proof. So now, because of time, let's go into the actual seeing the batch NFTs live in an actual demo environment. So we'll come here. This is the VNFT demo environment. Where's my mouse? We'll come here to see the NFTs that are owned by me. I have a few batch NFTs myself. I'll come over here and mint a new NFT. What do we want to use? Let's go with this. I'll come just here and just mint a batch NFT. Okay, so let's just go live stream on everything. Because it's a demo environment, we can do this, right? And I'll just do that. So there's no need for lockable content today. So let's just mint a batch of 10, right? And just mint that and just see this batch NFT code actually working happening live, right? So Julian is actually a guy from VNFT here who is on the call with us today, who has helped us, get this demo environment ready for this batch NFT today. So hey, Julian, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome. So obviously you can see that we're minting a batch NFT at the moment. Is there anything you want to tell us about this process here, how it happens on the NFT side?
Yeah, so we've done an integration with AVN blockchain, obviously. So what you just showed with Nahu. So it was an interesting piece of work. Obviously, there is some similarities with how we mint a single NFTs, but in general, the process works differently in terms of how NFTs are minted. So yeah, it was very interesting in our team. Obviously, we're more focused on web. Rather than a blockchain. So it was interesting to see how we can be integrating with the blockchain and how that's gonna work all together. So introducing the concept of, I would say, lazy minting, where NFT are only minted when they are bought, was the main change we had to do on the batch NFT. So, but it's good to see it finally come together, because it's been quite a few weeks working on that. So it's been it's been good.
Nice. So for the purposes of this particular demo, we'll just stick to creating a batch NFT and going through the fiat payment channel. So I want to sell this for $10. Pick today. I just want to pick some time from now. Let's go with that. Maybe an hour from now. And I want to list this batch NFT for sale. And just like that, my batch NFT is listed for sale. Right. That's there. Anyone can see that and they can just bid on that. Right. So now that this NFT has been listed for sale, I can then come to a different account. I'm just going to refresh this. And I can see this batch NFT there. And I really like the way this is captured, because you can tell it's a batch just by looking at it. There, it looks different from other cards there. I just click on that and I can see buy now. I can see the history of this NFT. It's a batch NFT there. Okay. So this is my view, and this is what the people will see when I'm selling this batch. And I can click and just buy now. I'll get to confirm it there, and verifies that, and boom, because it already has my details. And there we go. I have my batch NFT bought. There's a whole celebration
Hey.
Right. So now that has happened directly here. I mean, it's so interesting how far we've come with the coding this on the substrate side of it, all the way to having this visually done on the VNFT side. It's so interesting that we're able to not just see the code for it, but actually see this live happening, right? It's something else. So come in here, where are we? Right. Okay. come in here. Oh, I just saw that. So from here, I can already tell that there's 9 out of 10 that are available for sale, which means that the blockchain recognizes that I've purchased one out of this 10 NFTs, and there's still 9 that are available for sale. You can see it right there in the editions. That is 10. Well, now 9 are for sale. 1 is being owned by someone. You can see that 1 has been purchased already. You can see the history. All of this is happening within minutes in this particular poll. So I think that would bring us to a really, really great end on the entire batch NFT journey from the code all the way to the UI. It's really exciting stuff so far. So coming back here, there have been some other achievements that we've done in this month. We've cleaned up some dead branches. We've improved documentation, improved security policies, some parachain research, updated the gateway documentation to include gateway URL and relay address. And just to point this out to you again is we have the AVN Gateway API. We have a system wallet that's compatible with the Aventus blockchain, and we have a block explorer. So, So you come to the Gateway API, and then you can see this is your way of interacting with the Aventus network, and you can basically see all the code there about transactions and minting NFTs and staking, other things like that. And you can basically interact with the network there. Everything you have is in the documentation. So all these links for this particular website that we've been through will be pasted in the caption later for you to find, give you about 30 minutes to so. Well, that brings me to the end of the AVN Tech Talk today. Thank you guys so much for being on the, where's this? This is the thing with Zoom, man. You lose something, you don't know where it is anymore. Okay. Thank you guys so much for being on the call today. Thank you, Nahu. Thank you, Julian, for your great work on this and for jumping on the call to explain this with me. Thank you guys for watching today. Thank you for jumping on the live. And we'll be here last Friday of next month to tell you again about the great work we're doing here at Aventus. Take care. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Manuel.
you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.